Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Traversing the Stars podcast.
Hello, Miss Owen. Thank you so much for coming to the Traversing the Stars podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Thank you. It's great to be here on Traversing the Stars. Love the title.
Thank you so much. And you're the star I get to talk to, and I'm very excited about that.
Thank you.
So I always start off with a question of inspiration. So what inspired your love for acting and who your earliest influences?
Oh gosh, I was there's certain qualities you're born with. I was born overly dramatic, overly emotional, hypersensitive, and I had a really vivid imagination. So as my mum would always say, I came out of the womb screaming, and I was a total drama queen from the get go. And I do believe, Jeff, that you can't be something you're not. And I think we're all born with different qualities to be good at something in life. And I started performing in little people school, primary school, doing singing and dancing. Through high school, I did high school musicals. So I knew as a young person that I'd found my place on the stage. I also was first published when I was 8 years old. I entered a children's poetry contest and I won. My poem got published and I won a whole $5. So
hey, congrats!
it was a fortune in those days. And but when I graduated high school, it was the end of the 70s, and being an actor just wasn't a career option for me, for multiple reasons. Firstly, I was biracial, and we just didn't have those kind of faces. We didn't have ethnically ambiguous faces on our TV screens growing up, whether that was watching Disneyland as a kid or in the cinema. Secondly, as a woman, my career opportunities were I could be a secretary, a teacher, or a nurse. So it just the arts in general. I think even to a certain degree today, I think parents still want their children to get a real job. To become a lawyer or a doctor or get a job that's going to provide for you. And I ended up training as a nurse, and I did qualify as a general obstetric nurse and went off to London to do my overseas experience. And of course, while I was there, I got bitten by the bug again. And I consider myself lucky that I was able to go, you know what, I still really want to be an actor. And to pursue that, because I think it is important to pursue what you're passionate about and what makes your heart beat.
So what was it about the magic of London that when you visited as a nurse, you thought to yourself, no, I'm not going to be a nurse anymore. I'm definitely going to go back into acting. What was it about the city itself?
Well, I did, first and foremost, I went there with a bunch of friends. We were all 21, 22. We were young. And we did what young people do. We went to concerts and we went to nightclubs. And London is the East End, it's the West End theatre. It's besides Broadway, West End theatre is as big as it gets in the world, and you're surrounded by bright lights, and it was like we were in a sweet store, a candy store. It was just that's just how it was. And so I just kind of went through, as I say, what young people go through or do. Not everyone does, but I did. And I was, I wanted to experience as much of life as I could. And then I kind of went through some personal stuff, and I kind of realized then that I still really had all of this passion and this thing to express myself. I needed to express myself, and I had stories to tell, and so I couldn't quite do that with nursing. And I went to drama school in London, and by this point I was 24. So if I'd have been 18, I would have gone full time, but I wasn't 18 anymore, and I studied part-time, and then I worked jobs to pay my rent, and I worked in theatre to learn my craft. And so I've been doing it ever since. End of 1985 is when I went to drama school.
So I read that you were trained at the Actors Institute in London.
Yes.
So, what was that experience like, and what did it teach you about the craft of acting?
That it is a craft. First and foremost, it's a craft. It's like being a doctor. We don't just get up and go, hey, I'm a doctor. It's being a doctor is a craft. You go to school, you learn, you do your homework, you do your assignments, you sit exams, whatever. And acting's exactly the same as that. It's a trade. It's like I can't just get up and say, hey, I'm a plumber. No, I might act being a plumber or act being a doctor, but it's like all careers. It's you've got to learn the nuts and bolts of the craft, and then the more you do it, the better you get. And I had a teacher, fantastic mentor in London, and she told me, if you're going to do shite jobs to pay your rent, then do it at good places. So I'd stage manage theatre shows. I worked at the Groucho Club as a waitress, which was like the biggest media restaurant in London. And you just do things that feed into your craft and just learning, because you can learn a lot by watching and listening.
Now, you also have this amazing also a career as a screenwriter. You wrote a play, The River That Ran Away. How does the writing stretch different creative muscles for you?
But I did write a few stage plays. The difference for me, it's like, I think this is true for a lot of us creatives, for a lot of artists, is our medicine is creativity. We've got to be creative. It's like our drug. If I'm not being creative, can get pretty miserable. I've got to have something that I'm passionate about, and it really doesn't matter if it is acting or writing. The difference is of course, writing is very introverted, but so is acting. You have to go inwards to learn your lines, develop your character, and it's the same for writing. It's an introverted process where you literally go into your imagination. The difference is with writing, you put it out on a page. With acting, you kind of put yourself out there, big time if it's on stage, and in increments if it's in front of the camera. So they're two different. They're very intertwined, though. I mean, I'm lucky in that regard. Whereas an actor, I can read a script and pretty much know the writer's intention, because I've developed stage plays and also multiple screenplays, and a lot of the time I write to keep creative. And one day I'd like to write a few books, when I've put my feet up a bit more. Bit too soon yet, but maybe also too, I'll apply myself to actually getting the movie made.
Are you more careful about the scripts or the projects you work on? Because as a writer, you have a better sense of what is actually a quality piece of writing and what may be trash.
Yeah, and this is the advantage I've had of spending a lot of time in LA. I mean, this is the university of the entertainment world, and every day of the week, if I had time, the luxury of time, you can go to a screening any day of the week and listen to the filmmakers talk about the making of the movie. So the other day, for instance, I went to see 13, the new Ron Howard film, where he was there. He presented the movie, and then you could chat with him afterwards. Or you go to a movie and you've got your A-list producer, director, and your stars sitting on the stage, and you more than often get the opportunity to have a dialogue. And one question I wanted to know when I went to see The Queen quite a few years ago at the Writers Guild, the screenwriter was there, and I was developing a project at the time where I had so many choices. So my question to that writer was, when you've got such vast resources, material like the Queen of England, I mean, that's a huge life.
Right.
What did you use what did you do or use to streamline the story? And he said, good question. And he said, the relationship between the Queen and Tony Blair. If you watch that film, it just keeps coming back to moments between the Queen and Tony Blair. And that's a streamlined story. And every story needs to be streamlined. I've read a lot of scripts that aren't streamlined, and some trying to find themselves in the editing room, which people who make films on digital now have a bit more luxury to do that. But for young filmmakers out there, writers, actors, get your script right, because to me, actors and directors, we're really only as good as our scripts, as our blueprint. And, this is the thing about the Orville. I mean, the scripts were just the caliber of writing in the Orville. You could just tell that people had spent hours and hours and hours working on these scripts. And so get your script sorted out, because the problem with what I've seen with a lot of young filmmakers is they don't get their script sorted out. So they spend a lot of time when they comes to shooting their movie on shooting scenes. So you're burning up time, you're burning up your cast and crew, you're burning up your resources, your budget, and then that stuff ends up being left on the editing floor. So, this is my first movie where I played the lead role in Lee Tamahori's Once Were Warriors. To this day, he's still the best I ever worked with, because the script was so lean. It was just so lean. It was like maybe only one little scene they got left on the editing room floor. But he crossed every T and he dotted every I. And when we did press together, he'd say two things. He couldn't have made the film in 34 days on $1.2 million without all of his 20 years behind the camera learning his craft. But secondly, making all of these commercials, television commercials that had beginning, middle, and an end. And the other thing is we shot on celluloid. So that was in 93. And we had limited celluloid. So we couldn't do multiple takes. Most of that film is one take. And very few scenes are actually multiple takes. So it's great when you're working with a director who's got a really streamlined, beautiful lean script, but he's also guided the writer into, this is how I want the opening sequence, this is how I want this is how I want that. And it was a joy to kind of watch Lee Tamahori and Quentin Tarantino, because we all toured the film festival circuit that year, and Pulp Fiction was Quentin's big movie, and we had and these two guys were like encyclopedias when it came to movies. It was like just sitting there listening to these movie buffs. So anyway, sorry, I've kind of lost. What was the original?
No, you're doing fantastic. You're doing fantastic. Basically, it's the importance of your skills as a writer and your acting. And I found that fascinating. And one thing that kind of struck me was that when you're discussing streamlining of a script, okay, and finding the heart of a script or heart of a story to write a script around, when you're an actor, are you streamlining your character? In other words, looking for the heart of that character and then building around it? Do you how complex of the character's background, emotions, whatever, are you thinking about when you're doing a particular scene or episode?
No, good question. I'm quite, if I'm popping in to do a cameo role for a friend, fairly straightforward. I don't do a lot of necessary history. But if I'm doing a major role, say like Beth Hecker, then I will, there's a lot of truth in that saying, show me the child and I'll show you the man. And that's what I learned in London too, is a character's life doesn't begin at the beginning of a play or at the beginning of a film. It begins right back in the womb. So, if you look at that childhood, you see what creates the adult in that person, what creates their triggers, their habits, their some of their character elements. So I tend to write like little autobiographies for major characters. And because as Anna Macy said, wonderful British actress, she said, how well rooted you are in your character's world, how well you know who you are, that's how good you're going to be as an actor, because that's what you're bringing onto the stage or in front of the camera with. And so I did all this research. I write little books, and you may not see it, but it is there. It's in my character. It's in the backbone of the character, and then how the character behaves. I mean, how do you know how your character's going to talk if you haven't figured out, are they working class? Are they middle class? Are they upper class? Did they grow up in the Bronx? Did they grow up in LA? Did they grow up in New York? You've got to know these things about your character. And so, and I enjoy that because it's like detective work. You know, you sit there and you can, especially if the screenplay's taken from a novel like Once Were Warriors was. I went through that novel with a fine-tooth comb and got all the information I could to help me build this character. But a good script, a very, very well-written script, will give you all the clues you need as an actor to go, oh, this is, you know, because a mistake that, well, it's a learning experience rather than a mistake that more inexperienced actors can make is they think it's about dialogue. It's nothing to do with dialogue. If you think about our species, we have a thought or a feeling or a sensation that causes us to say something. It's like something simple like, okay, I've got to get a zipper. I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting a bit dry now. I really need to, excuse me, I'm just going to get a glass of water. So if you think about that process, it's the inner life. It's what does the character think, and especially with camera. If you're thinking and feeling exactly what your character is thinking and feeling in that moment, the camera sees it, sees everything. And that's the scary part about the camera, because you can't hide anything from the camera. It does see everything. It really, this is a good one actually. When I had to do my first job for TV, and I was scared because I'd only ever done stage, and I rang my mentor in London and she said, listen, sweetheart, she just said, just remember, on the stage in theatre, you go out to your audience. With camera, you let the camera come inside. And that really sums up the difference between the nuts and bolts of the craft are the same, but yeah, you definitely make adjustments. Camera is a lot more intimate in a lot of ways, and you know, on stage though, you don't get take two, so you get one shot to get it right. And I am going to have a sip of water.
Oh, no worries. The interesting thing when you're talking about is like between dialogue, you're still acting. I sometimes wonder if when actors are performing a part, they are waiting for their dialogue to start acting. But if you're thinking about or keeping in the moment when you're not speaking, like as you mentioned, how hard it is to maintain that focus and maintain in your head the character's thoughts and ideas. So even when you're not on camera or not speaking dialogue, you're still performing.
If you're even thinking about that, then you're not in the scene. You know, you can turn down the volume on a great movie, and you know exactly what's going on because of the way they're behaving, because the actors are thinking and feeling. They may not say anything, or you may not hear them speak, but you still know exactly. So that's what you're doing in that present moment. Michael Caine, I learned a lot from him. He used to run wonderful workshops, and he wrote a great book called Acting for Film, or Acting for the Camera. And he talks about that. He said he was doing a stage play where he didn't have any dialogue in the scene. And the director says to him at one point, well, what are you doing, Michael? And Michael says, well, nothing. I've got no dialogue. And the director said, no, Michael. You were sitting there thinking, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say? And if you think about our species as humans, there's never one blank moment. Well, you might have the odd blank moment, but not many moments where you're not thinking or feeling a certain way. So even if you're in a scene on camera, you're still engaged. And the way you do that is you put your focus onto the other actor. Because if you're in your head, and this often happens, you know, an actor will get caught in the head and they get stuck in their head and go, oh, God, what's my next line? Do I know my next line? What's my next line? Now, if you are just present and you listen, if I say to you, do you have sugar in your coffee? What would you say?
I would have to think about, do I like sugar? And I would have to say, yes, I like sugar.
Yeah, you'd say yes or no. So that's what I mean. It's like acting is listening and responding, or listening and reacting. So if you're present and you're present in that scene, you shouldn't be stuck in your head going, oh God, what's my next line?
Mm.
Because granted, when it comes to saying your next line, you're so stuck in your head that you've lost your moment. And that's what presence is about, is that, and you see it. You see it in television, you see it in film, when an actor is just 100% mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically in that moment of time. And it's one thing I do love about acting is you are forced to be in the moment. Again, really, when you think about life, that's all we have, is we have this one moment between you and I. The world could blow up in 5 minutes, and we go, well, at least off we go with the stars. But it's like, it's really causes you to have to be totally in that moment, to listen, to feel, to react, and that's what human beings do. So if you're acting, then you are acting. The better word is being. Like, I'm just being Heveena, or I'm being Beth Hecker. I'm just being this character. I'm just in this character. And if you've done your homework and all that, another great saying from another great actress, Zoe Wanamaker, all tedious research is worth one inspired moment. So, and it's true. And I remember I spent weeks and weeks reading this book about a certain character, and I thought, well, didn't really get much out of that, but something came when I was in the creative zone that just popped, and it came from all that tedious research. So, preparation, and really it's the same for acting and writing. You do all your homework, you do all the work, and then when you get in front of the camera on the stage, it's really, you let it go and you let it do it. You get out of the way and you let it does itself. If you've ingrained the homework, we're quite like robots that you feed and put in this, and churns it all up, and then you let it go. You really have to let it go and trust and be in the moment. And so for me, it's a spiritual practice in a lot of ways too, is just letting go. Let go and just let it kind of float. And so really we become channels. And I think it's the same for writing. We become channels. And then if you're in that zone and you're writing the story, and then it starts to write itself in some ways. It's the same as acting. And then you have these great, wonderful, spontaneous moments, which you could never have thought of. They're I call them a creative combustion. They've combusted it kind of there in the ethers, because you're in that creative zone. I love it. I do love creativity, and I do love writing, and I do love acting.
I have heard acting being described as like a tennis match between you and another actor.
Yeah.
If another actor, or when you have, I'm sure it has happened where you've worked with another actor, you have to say the name, who hasn't been as invested in that character as you are, or not in the moment like you are, does that affect you acting against someone who you can tell isn't in that moment like you are?
Yeah, I learned a long time ago two things. You don't have to love who you're working with, but you have to work with them. Doesn't mean you have to love them, but you do have to work with them. Because when you think about TV or film, we're all just a little piece of the bigger jigsaw puzzle. And also, too, your fellow actor's performance is none of your business. And if I've allowed that to happen to me, where in my head, I've directed the scene and thought, well, this is how it should be. And then we're doing it, and they're like, and then I'm in my head thinking, no, they're not doing it the way I think they should be doing it. And that just kills the scene, because I'm judging them and I'm directing them, and that's not my job. And the third thing I've learned is really good directors and good editors can make any scene that you thought that was real shite. And then the way they put it together, you just go, wow. I'm going to tell you a story. Three Kings? I think it was Three Kings, that movie set in Iraq with George Clooney.
Oh, yeah. I love that movie. Absolutely love it.
Well, when I read that script, I thought, this is really boring. Because it was just a really generic, common script, and I thought, I've seen this story 1,000 times. It's just not that, because there was a cameo role that I perhaps could have done, which is why the script was sent to me. And of course, Cliff Curtis, who's in Once Were Warriors and is also in the Avatars coming out very soon, this extraordinary actor, he ended up doing it. And there you go. That's a film where a director took what looked like a mediocre story on the page and flipped it upside down and just turned it into something really special. And I love his work, and I love what he does. He's a very unique director, and I think that's an important thing about, as a writer, actor, director. It's who you are. That's what you're bringing to the game. It's like, I try to tell young people, don't try and be like somebody else, because there's only one of you, and there only will ever be one of you in history. So bring your uniqueness and what makes you original, because that's what people want. And it's easier now, I like to think, because we're living in an era where it is always about being the best you, and that it's okay to be different, and we can be nerds in public.
That is true. That is 100% true.
It's very popular now, and just people can have a lot more ability to just be their unique self. And I just always go, look, just go at it. As long as you're not hurting yourself or you're not hurting anybody else, then I think our obligation to our creator, because our creator, whatever you call that creator, you might call it Star Wars, you might call it whatever, that's a personal thing, but you've been made in a very unique and original way for a reason. And I think it's our obligation to use our originality to kind of add something to the world. And I'm just very blessed that I've gotten to work on some pretty amazing trailblazing stuff that's come out of the minds of geniuses. Whether that's George Lucas and all his original Star Wars, or Spielberg, who I got a moment to work with, or Seth MacFarlane. I mean, these guys are visionaries. They're visionaries, and they dared to dream. And George Lucas dared to dream the story, and everyone thought he was crazy, and he just pursued it. And when you think about Seth MacFarlane, the kid started writing comics and drawing comics for his local newspaper. And look at how big that comic strip's now become.
Yep.
So it's just, I think it's exciting times. Yeah, I know a lot of people go, it's scary times, and yeah, there's scary stuff going on in the world. But if there's something that can bring us comfort for all, particularly all of those listening who want to be creatives, just write that story that only you can tell. Write what you know. And there's a real consolation prize here that COVID gave us. When COVID happened and we all got locked down, we all got shut down, what did people do? They resorted to the arts. They turned their music on. They watched television. They read books. They watched movies. Their kids played games. Where would our world be without creativity? So don't ever think, because a lot of countries can think of the arts as a luxury, but to me it's an absolute necessity. And if you want to find out what's going on in the country, read the poets, read the novels, because they're often will be the ones who are telling closer to the truth than the politicians. It's just the way it is.
I agree 100% on that. 100%. I mean, you recently have been well, I say recently, but I know things aired a while ago. And one of my favorite shows ever, I think one of the smartest shows out there, the Orville, you played Heveena. So how did you get involved in the Orville, and were you already familiar with the show when you got the part?
Yeah. And listen, it's only recent. My show my episode was on very recently, because I was episode 8 and we just had the season finale this week. So
Yeah.
it was only literally on 3 weeks ago. So to me, it's been very recent. The whole thing, it feels very recent because season 3 finished shooting in August last year, and then boom, it came on air, and it's just been a wonderful roller coaster ride. So I've been on board the Orville since season 1. And I was here in LA, and my agent rang me and said, look, there's a pilot. They'd like to see you for this character, and so read it and let us know if you're interested. So I read the script and I could see it then. I thought, wow, this is pretty damn cool. You know, it had its formula, but it had its uniqueness in terms of its character and characters and its location. But I thought, I'm not right for that doctor. I'm not right for that character. You know, I know what I'm right for, and I know what I'm not right for. And I said to my agent, I said, you know, I'm not really right. It's a great pilot, great script, but I'm not right for that doctor. And of course, Penny is damn perfect for that character. So tremendous casting all around there with the series regulars. So, but my agent said, if they really want to see you, so just go in. So I did. I did my homework. I learned the lines. I got familiar with it. I worked with my coach. I went in. I did a really nice audition. And the casting directors called my agent the next day and said, look, she did a really good audition, but she's not right for the character. However, there is a character in episode 3 that she could be very right for. Do you want to send her her this scene and ask her if she'd like to come back in and read for the character of Heveena? So I get the scene and I read the scene, and it's Heveena's courtroom speech. How could I say no to that? It was just like, you know, that's what I'm saying. You just know what you're right for. And it was such a brilliant, beautifully written speech, monologue. And so, of course, I'll go back in. So I learned it, did my homework, got off page, went in, did it, and I booked the role. And I got to work with Seth, and I'll never forget it because he's in those two sets. There's a little scene where they find her in a cave, and then we're in the courtroom, and he was right there behind my right shoulder, Seth, in the scene. And you know, every scene gets shot from multiple directions, other characters, the camera's on other characters, and it's back on you. And at about the 8th hour, you know, I was starting to get a bit tired, and I remember getting halfway through the monologue and I went blank for a second, and Seth said one word, and I said, thank you, that's what I'm looking for. And boom, carried on. And that's as good as it gets, man. You know, when you're in that creative zone and you're just feeling and almost reading other people's minds, it's as really, and the gift of that is we didn't have to stop the whole scene because of that one word. And I think that's what he really liked about me is I utilized that. I didn't take it as a judgment or a criticism, or I didn't get defensive. We're just surfing that wave, man. And that's you know, I've never surfed, but I understand when surfers talking about being in the zone and when they're just surfing that wave, and gamers when they're surfing that wave, you know, and it's just, I'll never forget it. And you know, we'd chat between scenes, and then he was so happy with what I did. He brought Heveena back for season 2. And so About a Girl, season 3 set up the whole Topa storyline. Season 2 was Sanctuary, where I go and he takes me to the nations, you know, the United Nations, the Union, to talk about the sanctuary. It's also when he introduces me to Dolly Parton. And I claim that she is the voice of our revolution. And Seth goes, go Dolly, go Dolly. Nice, like one of the nicest guys I've ever worked with. And then, of course, season 3, you know, he brought Heveena me back for the episode 5, A Tale of Two Topas, and episode 8, Midnight Blue. And by God, there's some just... I just sat and I mean, I knew what to expect, but I just sat in awe of the writing, the acting, the directing, the special effects, the wardrobes, the costumes, the makeup. It was just Gently Falling Rain, The Tale of Two Topas. Oh gosh, what was the one? I feel I'm blanking on the one where it's Two Lives. Oh God, Scott Grimes. It was just an exceptional. And then episode 9, Domino.
Yeah.
That I just is, and I mean this. It's as good as it gets, and it really is must watch TV. And as a lot of people actually, Orville took me into the Twitterverse, which I'd never really been into before. I mean, I'd set up an account and they never went there, but I got kind of engaged and it was fun, and it's just. It's like Star Wars fans, it's great. People are very passionate about their worlds, and I just relished it, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm like everybody else. I really hope they do renew the Orville, because I think it's worked so hard it deserves to be renewed. And seriously, some of those episodes that I've just mentioned were my favorites, and I loved actually how the season, the two bookends, the bookends of Jacob and Penny, they're the kind of, and he commits suicide in that first one, but the doctor and
Isaac.
Isaac. Thank you. Where it starts with their romance. Will there or will there not be a romance? And then of course it ends with the wedding. So we became two really good bookends and then all of this epic action stuff in the middle. I thought it was just stunning, and I take my hat off to all, especially the season regulars and all the crew, because everybody worked very long hours. Even more so because we were shooting the season with COVID protocol. So you could only have so many people on a set at any given time. And then between setups, you'd have to go and sit in different rooms and you'd have to have the masks on. So, that's a slow process. And we got tested every day, even the days off, we got tested. But hey, not one case of COVID throughout the entire season. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people who worked on the Orville. So, but yeah, it made for much longer days, the COVID protocol, but it kept, everyone was kept safe, everyone was kept well. And I really hope that the Orville does go to season 4. And I really hope I get another opportunity to work with the MacFarlane himself. I love working with Seth, and I really enjoy, working with the cast and John Caesar and the director and Tom, producer who's always there on set, and Howard Berger and Tammy Lane, the two main people in the makeup department. Just good people all around. So fingers crossed.
I hope so. I mean, I really love the Orville. It's one of the surprisingly smartest shows on TV. And I remember the first season, people were talking about it being like a Star Trek spoof, but it grew so much into its own and grew so smart and so insightful into things that I really do think it's one of the best things on TV right now is the Orville.
Yeah, and that's a perfect word, smart. And I tell you what, that bloody Seth MacFarlane's a clever bugger. By God, he's smart. He's so smart, and he's very, very well read. He said, he reads every night. He reads. He just consumes information, and he's really very at the front. He's a real true trailblazer, Seth. He's always at the front of what's going on in the world. I mean, if you look at some of the storylines, it's uncanny how life was imitating art, whether it was the issue of Gently Falling Rain, of the abortion, an abortion going on, the whole subject of abortion, I should say, going on here in America. And then, the Tale of Two Topas and what Heveena does, that zealous zealot which Seth knew I really struggled with. I really struggled with what Heveena did, and I would keep saying to Seth because I felt so bad. And I'd go, but Seth, she's just a child. It's like,
Right.
You got to remember, it's for the good of the cause, for the good of the cause. She's not thinking like that. Also, we all think that the bad guys have left. So, I'm not thinking, if you ask this of Topa, there are going to be repercussions. Yeah, there we go. Orville season 3, New Horizons. It was.
What I found fascinating was that episode, it was so easy. I think if the Seth MacFarlane could have gone the easier route and said Heveena is honestly all good. She's fighting for the rights of female Moclans, all good. These Moclans all bad, but they put Heveena allowed her to be like kind of morally ambiguous on some level, in which she does endanger the life of a kid, and knowingly does it. And when you're playing the character, are you playing it as Heveena just, it kind of relates to self-righteousness? This is the cause is bigger than everything, and we're going to do it. Or did you play it as Heveena knowing that was a moral line she was crossing and doing her best to either maybe ignore it or try to delude herself and thinking that it wasn't really a bad thing? Like, how did you approach that moral question that she was in?
I couldn't even look at it as a moral issue for Heveena. This was about saving thousands of lives. This was about, and as she says to Captain Mercer in one of the scenes, our cause has always required sacrifice. And when you think about the situation here, where she talks about the tedious task it takes for them to smuggle one baby or one child, it just takes eons because they've got to go through different galaxies and have different contact points. And then suddenly if you had somebody on the Orville who could press one button, that one button would save 1,000 at a time. So she's not thinking about the morality. She's not thinking about crossing a line here. All she's thinking of, and what she's passionate about, is saving female lives and stopping them from being butchered. And I think if she had to stop and question her morals, she wouldn't have done what she's done thus far, because even in season 2, she'd broken the law, which is why, she had to go before the union to talk about the sanctuary and why the sanctuary has been created and why there's a need for the sanctuary. And I couldn't afford to, me as Rena, being Heveena, even think about the morality of it. I would do that between scenes, and I will tell you this, because Rena, had struggled greatly with what Heveena did. But Heveena didn't have that struggle. So you can't put my struggle on her. You just have to be focused on what she's doing. And that's even when you look at characters, evil characters, you can't judge them. You'd never be able to be them. You wouldn't do justice. Your job is to honor your character. And that once you start judging, it never helps. It gets in the way. But at the end of it, I had a really good cry. I did. I had a really good cry. And I sobbed like a little baby. Howard Burgess. And he said that was hard. And I said, yeah, it was. But for the good of thousands and thousands of lives, I had to do what and as Seth said, his reasoning for it, of course, it sets up the whole story.
Yeah.
And hopefully may lead to future stories, who knows, in season 4 perhaps.
So when you're playing Heveena and you're thinking about the interaction, she has a very touching moment with Topa in the woods. When you're playing it as Heveena, are you thinking to yourself, Heveena cares about Topa, or is Topa literally just a prop for her bigger concerns?
Oh, no. It's like what she says right back when she first meets Topa, and they talk about, she talks about how proud she is Topa and what she's come through and the courage she's had to return to her female identity. And Topa thanks her, for being there and standing up for her in the courtroom. So no, there's a family feeling there, like she loves Topa, and she has a history with her. I mean, she fought for this baby. So I don't know how many years have gone on between seasons, but that baby has been family to Heveena, and in a certain regard of prize, because she, even though they lost their case, she was able to in her own time go, hey, this is how I feel and this is who I want to be. And that's what Heveena is all about, is allowing women to be women. And so no, she doesn't see her. She actually says it in a line where Topa says, I want to know more about your revolution. And Heveena says, our revolution. And Topa, she sees Topa as very much part and parcel of this revolution that she has created and always will be, and very aligned to the cause. And I mean, she's so obsessed with saving lives that she's not really conscious of the fact that she could be sacrificing. Because once again, she didn't know that the bad Moclans, everyone thinks the bad Moclans had already left. And so I don't see it as Heveena didn't see a danger in that very present moment. There wasn't a danger. Worst case scenario, I think in Heveena's head, thinking through, if I ask her to do this, she just has to punch in a few numbers, send a password code. Worst case scenario, if she got caught, well, she'd be on the safe Orville, and she wouldn't be punished. She would be protected by her father, by Captain Mercer. So in my Heveena's thinking, little did we know that they're being watched and that the bad Moclans are still there. So that's how I looked at it, and that's how it went down. I had nobody had any idea that the bad guys were still there. So, that lets Heveena off the hook a little bit.
Well, I mean, she's a great character. She's a great character. You don't want her, be vilified, though she does make a really kind of brutal choice. A great scene in that episode is with Dolly Parton. And one of the cool things about the scene, and I kind of think the nuance is interesting, because Heveena is listening to the advice of basically a hologram talking to her, and she, on the one hand, is listening to what she believes is Dolly Parton, but the other hand, she knows it's not really Dolly Parton, and she kind of letting herself get convinced that it is. So how did you handle that nuance there?
Yeah, no, because in the simulations, they are the real person. It's the person, just like, so when they, in episode 5, when she they do the recreate the simulation, bring up the simulation of Heveena. It's really Heveena, and it's me right there that Topa's looking at. So it is Dolly, but it's in a simulated. It's in a simulated environment. But she is there, and not that we do in the scene. Heveena could have touched her, but that wasn't written in the scene, and also 2 very strict COVID protocols. So. No, it was like you and I. I was sitting there having this real chat with this real person who then turns around and starts singing a song to me. And I'm like, oh. And look, it's, I can see why Dolly is as famous as Dolly is, and American royalty. And what you see is what you get. She is just so precious, and her heart is so big, and she was just so kind and so nice, and just a joy to work with, and a total pro. She had all her lines memorized, and good actors, they know their lines, they come on set, they listen to the director and do what a director wants them to do, and then put their own touch on it. And So no, it was doing the real. So even though you're in a simulated scene, she's not a 3D character, so to speak. It's a real person in a simulator. So there's a difference there. It's not a hologram. And at first, because Dolly couldn't come to LA because literally COVID was happening, and that's too where we lost a whole year. Is I was meant to have started shooting my Orville scenes for season 3 in April 2020, and we went into lockdown. The day I'd done all my pre-production is costumes, makeup tests, wardrobe, blah blah blah. Get your script, get your schedule, and the Sunday I was due to go in on the Monday and shoot a scene, and I got the call to say, "Hey, we're shutting down." So that was 2020 gone to COVID, and I didn't get to do my scenes until April 2021. So with the Dolly scene, there was talk about how's this going to happen, and then so I knew that they were going to send her half of the set to Nashville and shoot her parts there, and the director would go over and shoot Dolly, and then we would turn around and shoot Heveena back in LA. What I didn't know till the last minute, this is how good these guys are at keeping stuff under wraps, because they have to. So I knew there was a scene with Dolly. But on the Monday, we were shooting the Union scene down at the brilliant, beautiful Disney Hall. And that morning, as Seth went by me, beginning of the day, said, morning, man, morning. He said, so you're looking forward to going to Nashville tomorrow? You can say, am I looking forward to going to Nashville tomorrow? I'm awesome. Like, I wouldn't allow myself to believe it until it happened, because even the scene itself is still surreal. I'm sitting there opposite Dolly, and I'm like, this is really happening, people. And there was 4 of us, only 4 of us allowed on set, and that was Seth MacFarlane as our creator, writer, producer, director, John Caesar, myself, and Tammy Lane, who did the Heveena makeup, because back in LA they were shooting other scenes, and head of department Howard Berger had a lot to do, so he said, no, Tammy's going to come with you to Nashville. So we left LA like around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By the time we got to Nashville, it was already 8 p.m. We got tested in the lobby, COVID tested, had a meal, and then went to bed and had to get up really early, because we only had Dolly for like 2 hours. And so I got up early because it takes an hour and 15 to get the makeup and the wardrobe and everything and Heveena on. And then we went in and met Dolly. Dolly, oh gosh. It really will remain a big highlight. I mean, I've had some special moments in my life, and Dolly's up there amongst just, I in hindsight, I thought about maybe taking something and asking her if she'd sign it for me, but I couldn't do it. But I was brave enough to say, can we have photos with you, Dolly? And so there are photos of the 4 of us together, and in hindsight, I'm kind of like, damn, I should have been brave. And I've been in a position where how privileged you are to be in the presence of somebody, a giant. And it was the same with George Lucas. I wished I'd asked him to sign something for me, but I didn't. I was too shy, or I didn't want to cheapen the moment, or cheapen's not even the right word. But of course, now in hindsight, I wish I had for both of them. But I don't say this often, but it's still, I'm going to say it while it remains true. Is there's only 6 actors in the world who have worked with both George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and I'm one of them, and I'm the only actress. I'm the only female to have worked with both, and it didn't quite occur to me at the time, 2000, because I'd literally done Star Wars: Attack of the Clones, which we shot on the Fox lot in Sydney, and then I'd come back into LA and did my cameo role for Spielberg's AI down in Long Beach. And I didn't even know that. I was at a Star Wars convention many years ago, and it was a fan who actually told me, he said, "Do you realize you're only 5?" I was number 5 at the time, but now there's 6. But to date, I'm still the only female. So
Very cool.
yeah. And also,
That's awesome.
I'm gonna add Dolly Parton to that list, and Seth MacFarlane, and long may there be many more wonderful creative opportunities, and because I'm here for it, and I enjoy what I do, and one day I'll write a book about those years in London, because I don't kind of go into it in depth, because it's too big of a story. We've all had our stories from when we were young and dumb, or I never forget it. 21, 22, think you have no concept of death, you have no concept of the future. You just you're fearless, and you just. But one day you will read the story. I'll write the story, because it is
That'd be awesome.
fascinating. But I avoid going into it unless you've got the luxury of time to give it a bit more justice. But no, we're here for this. We're here for the sci-fi.
Well, like I said, when you're ready to write that story and ready to publish it, you come back on, you talk about that as well. That'd be fascinating.
Absolutely. And hey, if we get a season 4, I just recently auditioned or did a self-tape yesterday for this very, very, very cool project, which I would love to book. So you follow me, I'll follow you, and I do post about jobs. Actually, I'm in one that came out yesterday on Netflix. I'm in Supergiant Robot Brothers.
Oh,
It's
very cool.
it's a 3D anime. My character doesn't come in until later in the series, but I did do a recent post about it, and that was a real fun fun character that I thought I'd posted it. Something's gone askew with my my Instagram. Where are we? Oh, here we go. Yeah, it's super. Sorry, I'll turn this down. It's super. I'm bringing this up because I want you to know the names, because this is us. This is an Oscar winner who won for Brave. Do you remember Brave?
Yes.
Well, this is the same director. So the same director directs this, and it's pretty cool. It's Supergiant Robot Brothers. It's on Netflix. It went to air yesterday. So I'm Sarge, but you won't see Sarge until later in the season. So fun stuff.
Well, the door to the podcast is always open to you, and whenever you want to talk, come right back in. I would love to discuss everything, especially the book. Apparently, when you're ready for it, you come back.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. It's been great to blaze the stars with you.
Indeed, it's been totally my honor, Ms. Owen, and like I said, I'm glad we had a chance to chat.
Thank you, Jeff. You stay safe and stay well, and I'll see you in cyber.
Indeed. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You're welcome. You too, love. Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Bye.